"This is not the time for Earth stories," Crix II screeched, their usually perfectly modulated voice cracking. "I'm being chased by floating spores that keep trying to propose a symbiotic relationship." "Just say no to symbiosis without a chaperone," Martinez called out, now swinging through the crystal trees using their improvised grappling hook. "Quick question, are any of you allergic to being used as bait? Because I have an idea." What level of desperation would warrant listening to a plan that begins with that question, Prynox asked, still arguing epistemology with their tree. "About the same level we're at now," Julian answered, their bioluminescence flickering in what was either panic or resigned acceptance. "The quantum predator is multiplying in several dimensions simultaneously." "Perfect," Martinez exclaimed, retrieving what looked suspiciously like a bit of shiny wrapper from their pocket. "This reminds me of this fantastic camping trip where I had to escape a pack of wolves using only a granola bar wrapper and optimism." "Stop comparing everything to your horrifying Earth adventures," all three aliens screamed in unison. "You know," Martinez continued, completely unfazed, as they fashioned some sort of reflective trap with the wrapper, "back home, this would be considered a really calm Tuesday. Did I ever tell you about the time I had to build a radio out of a coconut and my own dental fillings?" The quantum predator roared again, now existing in at least 5 dimensions at once. "Please, Prynox," begged the crystalline tree, "crystallize me now. It would be more merciful." The tree, having achieved philosophical enlightenment through their debate, respectfully declined. After 6 hours of quantum predator dodging, philosophical tree negotiations, and what Martinez insisted on calling creative problem-solving, the team finally regrouped in a relatively safe cave. Well, safe if you ignored the bioluminescent fungi that kept trying to spell out ominous warnings in ancient galactic standard. "You know," Martinez said, casually examining their drop pod's malfunctioning navigation system, "it's kind of funny how all our pods scattered in a mathematically perfect Fibonacci sequence." "What's funny about that?" Crix AI demanded, still picking symbiotic spores out of their ceremonial head ridges. "Oh, nothing," Martinez grinned, pulling out a small metal container from their pack. "Just that the probability of that happening naturally is about the same as finding a Starbucks in the Andromeda Galaxy. This whole thing was planned." What Prynox attempted to dissolve into their liquid state again, but Martinez quickly caught them in what appeared to be a repurposed sock. "Hey, no melting. We need to conserve water. Now, who wants to learn how to make fire?" "We have plasma generators," Julian pointed out, their spots glowing with smug superiority. "Add plasma generators," Martinez corrected, pointing to their waterlogged, acid-corroded, and generally deceased equipment. "Now we're going to do this the fun way. Who wants to learn about friction?" 3 hours and several singed appendages later, they had a respectable fire going. Martinez had somehow managed to teach basic fire-starting skills through a combination of sarcastic commentary and increasingly ridiculous Earth analogies. "See? Just like rubbing your tentacles together, but with sticks instead. And hey, Prynox, your natural bioluminescence makes you an excellent fire starter, though maybe next time with less screaming about primitive technology." "I still don't understand," Crix II muttered, nursing their scorched aristocratic fingers, "why we can't just call for extraction." "Because," Martinez said, pulling something mysterious from their seemingly bottomless pockets, "then you'd miss out on the best part of survival training, space marshmallows." "Space? What?" Julian asked, their translator glitching on the unfamiliar term. "They're like regular marshmallows, but with 300% more existential dread," Martinez explained cheerfully, skewering what appeared to be small white cubes onto sticks. "Careful though, they're made with synthesized sugar molecules that can achieve sentience if heated above 150 degrees. "You're joking," Prynox said flatly, then watched in horror as their marshmallow began humming the galactic anthem. What followed would later be known in Academy history as the Great Space Marshmallow Incident. Highlights included Crix II attempting to negotiate a peace treaty with their sentient snack, Julian accidentally creating a small marshmallow civilization, and Prynox discovering that their species could, in fact, be allergic to philosophical confectionaries. "In all my years of diplomatic training," Julian commented, while watching their marshmallow society develop space travel, I never expected to commit genocide via digestion. That's the spirit, Martinez beamed, somehow having made a perfect golden brown marshmallow despite the planet's irregular gravity. Now, who wants to learn about something called ghost stories? Is it worse than the story about your summer camp where you had to escape from someone called Jason while wearing a cursed hockey mask? Prynox asked warily. No, that was just Friday the 13th. I'm talking about real scary stories, like the time I went camping in Michigan and... A distant roar interrupted them, followed by the sound of quantum shifting. Perhaps Crix-II suggested, having finally eaten their marshmallow mid-peace negotiation, we should focus on survival strategies instead of Earth horror stories. Oh, right, Martinez pulled out their Swiss Army knife again. Let me teach you about something called trap setting. It's just like programming a quantum computer, except with more sticks and a higher chance of accidentally catching yourself. As the night wore on, something strange began to happen. Between Martinez's increasingly outrageous survival tips, and that's why you should never try to outrun a quantum predator without first challenging it to a dance-off, the shared trauma of sentient marshmallows, and the genuine achievement of building their first fire, the team began to bond. You know, Prynox admitted, having finally mastered the art of striking a match without dissolving in panic, this is actually somewhat satisfying. Indeed, HFY agreed, their bioluminescent spots now pulsing in sync with the firelight. Though I will deny saying this under oath, there is a certain primitive appeal to all this. That's the hypothermia talking, Martinez said cheerfully. Now, who wants to learn about something called s'mores? It's like the marshmallows, but with added chocolate that may or may not be quantum entangled. Is everything from Earth potentially lethal? Crix-II asked, already reaching for the chocolate despite their better judgment. Nah, only the fun stuff, Martinez grinned, pulling out a packet of crackers that appeared to be glowing slightly. Now, let me tell you about this one time at band camp. The fungi on the cave walls rearranged themselves to spell out doom in 3 different dead languages, but by now, nobody was paying attention. They were too busy discovering that quantum entangled chocolate could, in fact, exist in a superposition of being both delicious and terrifying. It started with a tremor. Not the regular kind that came from Novus VI's quantum unstable core, but the sort that suggested something big enough to have its own gravitational field was moving nearby. That's odd, Martinez said, pausing in their demonstration of how to weave protective hats from crystallized tree fragments. The ground shouldn't be shaking in 7 different dimensions at once. Then they saw it. The Novus VI apex predator, a creature so terrifying that even the quantum shifting predators told horror stories about it to their quantum shifting children. Oh, Prynox whispered, their entire form vibrating in terror. That's a chronovore. The beast was difficult to look at directly, partly because it existed in multiple time streams simultaneously, and partly because it had enough teeth to make a shark feel professionally inadequate. Its skin rippled with temporal distortions, and each of its 12 eyes seemed to be viewing a different possible timeline. Fascinating, Martinez exclaimed, pulling out their notebook. The temporal displacement field around it is causing localized causality loops. This is just like that time I went camping in the Bermuda Triangle. Why do you keep camping in places that want to kill you? Julian screamed, their bioluminescence strobing in panic patterns that were probably visible from orbit. Character building, Martinez replied cheerfully, already rummaging through their pack. Now, who wants to help me make some weapons? We're going to die, Crix-II stated matter-of-factly, their aristocratic composure finally cracking. We're going to die, and time itself will forget we existed. Nah, this is fine, Martinez said, somehow maintaining their grin, while the chronovore began warping the fabric of reality around them. Look, we've got plenty of materials to work with. Prynox, hand me that broken plasma generator. HFY, I need your quantum communicator. Crix-II, let me borrow your ceremonial head crest. My ancestral head crest. Crix-II clutched the ornate piece protectively. This has been in my family for 12 generations. Soon to be 13 if we do this right, Martinez winked, already connecting wires from the plasma generator to what looked suspiciously like a slingshot made from their bootlaces. The chronovore roared, the sound echoing both backwards and forwards through time. Several nearby trees aged 1,000 years and then reverted to saplings in the span of seconds. "Okay, quick physics lesson," Martinez announced, wielding their makeshift temporal slingshot. "If we combine the quantum communicator's phase variance with the plasma generator's power core and route it through this crystallized tree sap, we should be able to create a localized temporal feedback loop." Should Nox had evolved past their liquid state into something approaching quantum uncertainty? Trust me, I did something similar once with a microwave and a toaster at summer camp. I don't think those situations are remotely comparable, HFY protested as the chronovore began digesting the past and future simultaneously. "Hold my protein pack," Martinez said with a gleam in their eye that made their alien teammates seriously question human survival instincts. What happened next would later be classified as Incident 47B Temporal Paradox via improvised engineering in the Academy records. Martinez's improvised weapon somehow managed to create a temporal feedback loop that caused the chronovore to experience all its meals simultaneously, including the ones it hadn't eaten yet. The resulting paradox made the creature pause mid-reality warp, looking distinctly queasy across multiple timelines. Martinez beamed, already preparing for phase 2 of their apparently existence-defying plan. "Now we just need to convince it that we'll give it temporal indigestion if it tries to eat us. Nox, remember those quantum-entangled S-Mores we made? You want to give an apex predator that exists in multiple timelines." "A stomach ache, Crix," I asked incredulously. "Got any better ideas, Your Crystalline Highness?" The chronovore, still processing its pan-temporal meal, watched with all 12 of its eyes as Martinez began juggling glowing S-Mores while whistling something called the final countdown. "This is officially the most ridiculous moment of my existence," HFY declared, their bioluminescent spots forming what appeared to be hysterical emoji patterns. "Just wait," Martinez called back cheerfully. "We haven't even gotten to the part where we ride it back to the extraction point." What all three aliens screamed in unified horror. "Oh yeah, it's just like bronco riding, except with more temporal displacement. Anyone know how to make a quantum lasso?" The chronovore, witnessing this display of what it could only assume was advanced psychological warfare, took a step back through both space and time. It had survived the creation of the universe, the heat death of multiple galaxies, and countless temporal wars. But somehow this small bipedal creature's complete disregard for cosmic horror was the most terrifying thing it had ever encountered. "That's right," big guy Martinez cooed, now fashioning what appeared to be a saddle from their remaining boot and some crystallized tree bark. "Who's a good temporal anomaly?" "You are." "Yes, you are," after successfully convincing the chronovore to give them a lift, which involved Martinez teaching it tricks using quantum-entangled treats. The team's journey was interrupted by what could only be described as the apocalypse having an identity crisis. Martinez said, studying the horizon where 3 different types of lightning, regular, temporal, and what appeared to be solid state, were competing for attention. "That's a Class 5 quantum hurricane with a side of reality distortion. Neat." Nox had evolved past their liquid state into something approaching quantum foam. The atmospheric pressure is approaching collapse levels. "Yeah, but check out those updrafts. They're creating localized time vortexes." Martinez pulled out what appeared to be a bent piece of metal from their seemingly bottomless pockets. "Anyone want to learn how to storm chase?" "Is that what killed your species, dinosaurs?" HFY asked, their bioluminescence now matching the storm's lightning patterns. "Nah, that was just a regular asteroid. This is way cooler. Quick, help me build a radio so we can warn the other teams." "All our equipment is fried," Crixie pointed out, their aristocratic composure finally giving way to practical panic. "And we're about to be hit by what appears to be solid lightning." "No problem. I've got exactly what we need right here." Martinez began pulling out an impossible array of items from their pockets. "Let's see. Crystallized tree sap, quantum-shifted predator tooth, some leftover marshmallows that achieved consciousness. Perfect." "What could you possibly build with that junk?" Nox demanded, watching as reality began to warp around them. Ever heard of the coconut radio principle? It's just like that, except instead of coconuts, we're using crystallized temporal anomalies. Hand me that tooth, would you? What followed was either the most brilliant or most insane demonstration of survival engineering in Academy history. Martinez somehow managed to construct a working quantum radio using 3 semi-sentient marshmallows for processing power, a quantum-shifted predator tooth as an antenna, crystallized tree sap for quantum entanglement, their remaining bootlace for good luck. And what they swore was just a regular paperclip but somehow existed in 5 dimensions. See? The marshmallow's newfound consciousness acts as a quantum processor, the tooth naturally resonates with temporal frequencies, and the tree sap maintains quantum coherence, Martinez explained, while casually dodging a bolt of solid lightning. Basic Earth science. The aliens watched in stunned silence as their human teammate, whistling something called Singin' in the Rain, calibrated the impossible device by tapping it against a rock and asking the marshmallows politely to connect to the quantum network. Is this why humans are classified as Deathworlders? Julian asked weakly, watching Martinez taste the air to check the quantum polarity. You know what Crixii said, their entire worldview visibly reshaping itself. I'm starting to think we've been underestimating the classification. This goes beyond Deathworlder. This is something else. The storm unleashed what appeared to be a tornado made of crystallized time itself. Martinez's response was to pull out their Swiss Army knife's barometer attachment. Oh, cool. The temporal pressure is approaching infinity. Anyone want to learn how to ride a time tornado? It's just like regular tornado riding, except with more paradoxes. There's no such thing as regular tornado riding, all 3 aliens screamed in unison. Not with that attitude there isn't, Martinez grinned, already fashioning what appeared to be temporal tornado safety harnesses from their remaining clothing items. Now, who wants to learn about something called storm surfing? The makeshift quantum radio crackled to life, the marshmallow consciousness successfully establishing a connection across the temporal storm. As Martinez began broadcasting warning messages interspersed with weather puns that somehow worked in multiple dimensions, their alien teammates finally understood something fundamental about humans. It wasn't that humans were merely adapted to a death world. It was that humans had looked at a death world, decided it wasn't exciting enough, and proceeded to turn survival itself into an extreme sport. Ready for some quantum storm chasing? Martinez asked, their eyes gleaming with what could only be described as evolutionary madness. The storm roared its temporal challenge. The aliens whimpered their prayers. Martinez just grinned and said, "Trust me, this'll be way safer than that time I went skiing during a volcanic eruption." Commander Zix Thander's rescue shuttle broke through Novus VI's atmosphere exactly 1 week later, expecting to find traumatized cadets in need of immediate psychological intervention. Instead, they found something far more disturbing. And that's how you make a compass using quantum-shifted predator drool and a magnetized marshmallow, Martinez was saying to their rapt audience. Their formerly pristine elite alien teammates were now sitting around a perfectly constructed campfire, wearing improvised clothing made from crystallized tree bark. And were they roasting more of those sentient marshmallows? Fascinating, Pry Knox exclaimed, their previously immaculate form now happily smudged with dirt. Almost as impressive as that shelter we built during the time tornado. I still think we could have ridden it to the extraction point, Martinez said wistfully. But I guess befriending the chronovore was the more responsible choice. What? Commander Zix Thander's scales shifted through several previously undocumented colors. Oh, hey, Commander, Martinez waved cheerfully. Want some quantum toasted s'mores? Crixii figured out how to make them exist in multiple timelines simultaneously. The taste is literally timeless. Crixii, their aristocratic head crest now decorated with various survival badges made from crystallized temporal anomalies, beamed with pride. I've already filed patents for temporal camping gear across 3 dimensions. We've also started a survival club, Julianid, their bioluminescent spots now permanently configured to display various wilderness survival tips. Next week, we're teaching a class on how to negotiate with philosophical trees while escaping quantum predators. Commander Zixthandar watched in amazement as his formerly helpless elite students demonstrated their new skills. Prenox had mastered the art of using their liquid state to filter toxic water. HFY was showing off their collection of improvised tools, including something they called a quantum Swiss Army knife, and was that the legendary chronovore wearing a friendship bracelet? I believe, Martinez said, grinning as they pulled out their ever-present notebook, now filled with survival tips in multiple languages and temporal states, that we've learned some valuable lessons about teamwork, survival, and the proper way to make friends with apex predators across multiple timelines. 1 month later, the Galactic Military Academy introduced a new mandatory tradition, the Martinez Survival Challenge. The graduation requirement now included successfully surviving 1 week on Novus VI, with bonus points for making friends with at least one theoretically unkillable predator, successfully cooking temporal marshmallows without creating sentient life, constructing emergency equipment from literally whatever you've got in your pockets, maintaining a positive attitude while experiencing temporal displacement. As for Martinez's team, they became legendary. Prenox started a galaxy-wide survival gear company. J. Julian wrote a best-selling book titled How to Make Friends and Influence Quantum Predators, and HFY. They turned down their guaranteed political position to become a wilderness guide. And Martinez? Well, they were last seen teaching a chronovore how to play fetch across multiple dimensions while planning their next camping trip to something called the Bermuda Triangle. After all, they were heard saying, survival is just another word for adventure with better stories. Commander Zixthandar's 4 eyes twitched simultaneously as he stared at the holochart displaying his class's latest survival training scores. The prestigious Galactic Military Academy had always prided itself on producing the finest officers in the known universe, but this batch. Oh, this batch was something special, and not in a good way. Computer, he gurgled through his breathing apparatus, display failure statistics for Class 2742A. The holographic display shimmered, presenting a list that would make any military instructor contemplate early retirement, or possibly a career change to something less stressful, like defusing quantum bombs. 99% of cadets failed basic fire starting. 98% couldn't identify potable water sources. 100% mistook toxic berries for emergency rations. 72% tried to negotiate with predatory flora. By the 7 moons of Xerxes, Zixthandar muttered, his scales shifting from their usual professional blue to a disturbed shade of mauve. They're getting worse. The problem, of course, was that the GMA had become a victim of its own prestige. Every wealthy family across the galaxy wanted their precious offspring to graduate from here. The result? A class full of pampered elite who thought roughing it meant having to use last season's atmospheric converter. Take Cadet Prenox, for instance, currently sprawled across an anti-gravity lounger in the back of the classroom, all 6 of their appendages occupied with different entertainment devices. Their species had evolved from apex predators, for crying out loud. Yet yesterday they'd submitted a formal complaint about the barbaric expectation of having to process one's own nutrient packets. Or Cadet Zich Ulian, the Centaurian diplomat's child, who had attempted to bribe a carnivorous plant with their trust fund during the last field exercise. The plant, displaying more sense than the cadet, had still tried to eat them. But then there was Martinez. Riley Beast Mode Martinez had arrived 3 standard cycles ago as part of the new human integration program. The first and only human cadet at the academy, they'd shown up with nothing but a worn backpack, a strange curved implement they called a Swiss Army knife, and an unsettling tendency to grin at the mention of survival challenges. Speaking of the devil. Morning, Commander the Human's voice rang out through the classroom, causing several sleeping cadets to jolt awake, their various appendages flailing in surprise. Beautiful day for a survival exercise, isn't it? The acid rain forecast looks particularly promising. Zixthandar watched as Martinez bounded. Yes, bounded. Humans had this disturbing habit of using excessive kinetic energy, even when gravity dampeners were fully functional to their seat. They were already dressed in what they called camping gear, complete with something called cargo pants. that apparently contained enough pockets to house a small colony. Cadet Martinez Thandar acknowledged, noting with a mixture of amusement and concern that the human was practically vibrating with enthusiasm. "I see you received the briefing about today's wilderness training." "Wouldn't miss it for the world, sir. Or any world, really. Hey, is it true we might encounter those giant carnivorous slug bears you mentioned last week? Because I've got some theories about their potential weak spots based on Earth grizzlies." From their anti-gravity lounger, Knox let out a horrified squeak and promptly fainted, all 6 appendages going limp simultaneously. Thandar felt his scales shifting toward an amused purple. Maybe, just maybe, this bizarre human's presence was exactly what his class needed. At the very least, watching Martinez's unconventional methods was proving to be the most entertainment he'd had in his last 50 cycles of teaching. Indeed, Cadet. Indeed, he straightened his posture, all 4 eyes focusing on the class. Now, who's ready to learn about emergency shelter construction? The collective groan from the alien cadets was drowned out by Martinez's enthusiastic hell, yet followed by the sound of what the human called a high five being forcefully applied to their desk. It was going to be an interesting day. Ladies, gentlemen, and various states of matter, Commander Thandar announced, his scales now pulsing with official orange undertones. "Welcome to your mandatory wilderness survival exercise." The emphasis on mandatory caused a wave of horrified gasps to sweep through the classroom. Several crystalline students literally clouded over in distress. But Commander Julian's voice wavered melodically, their bioluminescent spots flashing in diplomatic protest patterns. "Surely you can't expect us to participate in such primitive activities. My parent is the chief negotiator of the Centaurian hegemony." Martinez, sitting cross-legged on their desk, a habit that continuously baffled their alien classmates, pulled out a strange rectangular object and began sharpening what appeared to be a primitive metal tool. "I can and I do," Thandar replied, all 4 eyes narrowing. "And before the rest of you start waving your diplomatic immunity badges, yes, I'm looking at you, Knox. All 3 of your current forms. This exercise has been approved by the High Council themselves." The room erupted in chaos. A Voltarian princess dissolved into her base liquid state in protest, slowly oozing under her desk. The twin Andromedans began a formal ritual of complaint, their antennae twisting into complex legal symbols. "This is absolutely outrageous," declared Crix II, the nephew of the Galactic Senate Speaker. "My personal AI assistant hasn't been programmed for anything below 5-star accommodations." Awesome Martinez's voice cut through the pandemonium like a plasma torch through butter. "Commander, please tell me we're going to Novus VI. I've been reading about its wildlife since I got here." The room fell silent, except for the soft clipping sound of Knox trying to reconstitute themselves. "Actually," Cadet Martinez Thandar's scales flickered with amusement, "that's exactly where we're going." The collective shriek that followed could have shattered reinforced durasteel. Even the liquid Voltarian princess froze mid-ooze. Not Novus VI," whispered Julian, their bioluminescence dimming to a terrified pastel. "The planet with the acid swamps." "And the carnivorous floating spores," Martinez added helpfully, now practically bouncing in their seat. "Don't forget the quantum-shifting predators that can exist in multiple states simultaneously. Man, Earth's Australia's got nothing on this place." The very same confirmed Thandar, projecting a holographic image of their destination. The planet hung in the air like a malevolent jewel, its surface a swirling mass of purples and greens under perpetually stormy skies. Novus VI Class 12 Death World, home to some of the most adaptive and aggressive life forms in the known galaxy. "I'm calling my lawyers," announced Crix II, reaching for their quantum communicator. "Already scrambled all communications," Martinez piped up, still cheerfully sharpening their knife. "Read about it in the mission brief. We're going full survival mode, baby." "The human is correct," Thandar continued, secretly enjoying the mounting horror on his students' faces. "You will be dropped in teams of 4. Each team will have exactly 1 standard week to reach the extraction point. You will be provided with basic survival gear and 1 emergency beacon which, I should note, will result in immediate failure if used." "But what will we eat?" wailed one of the Andromedans. "Whatever you can find," Martinez answered before the commander could speak. "I've been practicing my spear throwing. Anyone want to learn how to set up snare traps?" The Voltarian princess, who had finally managed to reform into a humanoid shape, promptly melted again. The terrain includes acid swamps, gravitational anomaly zones, and the infamous crystal forest. Zixthandar continued, bringing up detailed terrain maps. The crystal forest is particularly interesting. The trees are actually silicon-based life forms that communicate through subsonic frequencies and occasionally try to crystallize unwary travelers. "Just like the time I went camping in Yellowstone," Martinez exclaimed. "Except, without the crystallization part. Though there was this one time with a geothermal geyser." "Teams will be randomly assigned," Zixthandar announced over the sound of multiple personal AI assistants short-circuiting in distress. "Except for Team Alpha, which will be led by Cadet Martinez." "What?" "Why them?" Prinox demanded, finally fully reconstituted but still slightly wobbling. "Because," Zixthandar said dryly, "they're the only one who didn't try to file an injunction against learning how to light a fire last week." "It'll be great." Martinez was now holding what appeared to be a length of primitive cord, expertly weaving it into complex patterns. "I'll teach you all my grandmother's secret recipe for emergency field rations, though we might have to substitute the beef jerky with whatever we can hunt down. Anyone know if those quantum-shifting predators are edible?" The commander watched as his elite class of galactic nobility's finest descended into various states of panic and protest, all except Martinez, who was now humming something called Survivor theme song while checking their compass. A charmingly obsolete navigational device that somehow still worked near quantum anomalies. And tomorrow was going to be interesting indeed. The drop pods weren't supposed to scatter. They really weren't supposed to scatter. Yet here they were, sprinkled across Novus VI's surface like some cosmic entity's idea of confetti. "Wee!" Martinez's voice crackled through the emergency comm system as their pod spiraled toward the planet's surface. "This is just like that time I went skydiving during a hurricane." "You what?" screamed HFY, their bioluminescent spots strobing in terror as their own pod careened in the opposite direction. "Oh yeah. Grandma said it would build character. Speaking of which, everyone remember the emergency landing procedures I showed you? The ones you demonstrated with a napkin and 3 pieces of fruit." Prinox's normally melodic voice had reached a pitch previously achievable only by quantum string vibrations. "That's the one. Tuck and roll, folks. And remember, if you land in the acid swamp, aim for the bubbling parts. The surface tension's stronger there." The pods crashed across a 50-kilometer radius, which was approximately 49 kilometers more than planned. Martinez's pod, naturally, landed perfectly in a clearing. Their assigned team members Prinox, HFY, and a very unhappy Crix EI had scattered to various unfortunate locations. Martinez stepped out of their pod, took a deep breath of the highly toxic atmosphere through their rebreather, and grinned. "Smell that? Reminds me of that time I got lost in the Amazon with nothing but a shoelace and a can of Spam." "Help!" Prinox's voice crackled through the comm. "I'm stuck in a tree. A crystalline tree. It's trying to have a philosophical debate with me." "On my way," Martinez called cheerfully, already pulling out their primitive Swiss Army knife and what appeared to be dental floss. "Just don't agree to any metaphysical propositions. That's how they start the crystallization process." "I believe I'm in the acid swamp," HFY reported, their voice surprisingly calm. "The good news is I've discovered my species can float on acid. The bad news is..." Oh no, what is that?" A roar that sounded like 1,000 bass drums being played through a garbage disposal filled the comm system. Martinez's face lit up with recognition as they fashioned some sort of grappling hook from the dental floss and pieces of their drop pod. "That's probably one of those quantum shifting predators. This reminds me of this hilarious story about the time I wrestled a moose.